Hi, I'm Mike Cavanaugh, the Executive Vice President at Max Digital, and I'm here today with Laurie Foster, the founder of Foster Strategies. Laurie, thanks for joining me today.
It's a pleasure as always, Mike.
So there's all kinds of interesting things going on in the last couple months. I know you've been incredibly busy. I know you've been very active in helping a lot of folks during this challenging time as well. Can you kind of start us off here a little bit with, really what have you been focused on the last couple months and what have you been doing with Foster Strategies Group to help out the industry right now?
I think it's a great question, Mike. I think the most important thing right now has been early in the coronavirus epic, if that's what we're referring to, is stabilizing people and helping people literally breathe and take a look at what's around them, what's happening and what isn't. Because I think fear and bad decisions creep in when we start making assumptions too far ahead of what we know, instead of dealing with exactly what's in front of us at that moment and predicting maybe the next few days or week, instead of trying to predict an entirely different future. So been very busy with that. All of my conversations about retention have come into play as vendors saw massive fall off, as dealers retreated from their agreements with them. Some of those people were prepared for that, some of them not so much. And then watching now that we have the gift of a little bit of time, watching people, the waters have ebbed and flowing back in now, and watching as people are coming back. But really interesting, and you and I could probably talk for this a while offline, is all of the activity as that flow is coming back in. It's not the same. Things are a little different. There are just different factors in play. Dealers have learned some things, vendors have learned some things. And so it didn't just go away and come back, it's shifted.
Okay. What are some of the things that you're hearing dealers have learned over this crisis? I think I've noticed a lot of, great adaptations that have happened. I think the industry as a whole has proven that it's more resilient than I think anybody could have expected throughout this time. We've seen some kind of record results on the financial statement side and on the sales side. But what do you think dealers have learned overall over the last quarter or so?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that they know, Mike, now that you and I were right all along. but all kidding aside, I think there are a couple of things that come into play. I think resilience has shown up beautifully in some places. I think that we've seen teams. I'm thinking of a specific group right now that I help out in California, and how their team has literally coalesced into something new and far beyond what it ever was collectively before. But I'm also seeing a lot of, I always do the both sides of this, that I've seen also an awful lot of activity towards this new, I don't want to use the words new normal, but this environment that we have found ourselves in versus mindset shift. And so without the mindset shift, you get action, but that action is like the rubber band effect. As soon as we let go of the rubber band, we're right back where we were before. So do I think that, I hope that through even going through the exercise of stretching the rubber band and releasing it again, at least they picked up a rubber band and stretched it. And so maybe now some of those activities are like, wait a second, we can do this a little differently, and we tried this. And so maybe it's going to take for some, it was like, holy cow, we're not going to miss out on anything. We are resilient, we are agile, we're going to put all of that into play. Fantastic. They're starting to chug towards greater success that hopefully will be sustainable even after this temporary moment of a surge in sales, which is truly temporary. And then those who embraced it more like, here's a tool we can pick up, we can try it, but maybe they've got to pick up that tool 10 times, but maybe the 11th, it becomes ingrained in who they are and how they do business. Okay.
Now, with these changes going on, have you heard or seen more remote work happening, at dealerships, which typically, has been known as an industry with no remote work, right? Everybody goes to the dealership, they're in an office, whether you're in the, the BDC, the sales team, you're typically in the store. Have you heard or seen more people working from home lately?
Other than the roles that we would immediately think of that could have the capacity to do that, no. I think we're an industry that's very comfortable with our work patterns. And so they're so ingrained in us that to not show up at work means bad. And so that's another one of those mindset shifts that hopefully with a little time and more data, we'll take a look at it differently. Because right now, I think if most organizations on the dealership, the automotive retail side, were honest, they would say if Mike is not at his desk, even though he's the GM, then he's not working, or he's not working as hard as he should be. If Laurie is not in the finance department, if she's not here present, because that's one of the things, Mike, frankly, that's sort of been mind-blowing through all this, is everybody's talking about how they're making it, oh, they're doing things for the customer and they're doing things a different way, yet operationally inside the four walls, and I'd love to hear others' perspective, but operationally inside the four walls, it's still the same people on site scrambling to put the thing together that then they ship off site. But love to hear more stories about that.
Gotcha. Now I know you help a lot of folks out when it comes to customer or employee retention, I should say. And we've seen a lot of large dealer groups and even some smaller dealer groups, dealerships that have parted ways with some folks. Whether that was through furloughs or layoffs, that maybe were temporary that have now become permanent. I think as we see the resurgence of sales pick up again, hopefully new vehicles start showing up a little bit faster for dealerships here as well. We may have to staff up again. Kind of on that same topic or along the same lines of remote work. Do you think getting out of that box will help us find new employees that maybe didn't want to join the industry before, or may help us retain employees that may be looking to get into a different industry? Do you think thinking outside of that box may help with that? Is that something that's been on your mind or that you've talked about at all?
Oh, absolutely. So all of this, because I do both client retention and employee retention, and they're knitted so closely together. But let's speak very specifically about employee retention. Right now, we have held ourselves back as an industry from reaching our peak performance by having rigid expectations, by having rigid profiles on what our performers should look like, what the personas in the dealership should look like. And every bit of the data has told us a very different story. Like, that is not what you need to be successful, but there are few exceptions out there, like bell to bell. Like, why are we talking about bell to bell? Like that phrase, like there's hardly an industry that you can find that uses those words. And rock stars and alphas and things like this, like the language that we use has held us back. And so now when we see that there are the breakout artists, I know one of them's in the Detroit area near where you are, where they say, you know what, I can broker vehicles or sell vehicles in a very different way. I don't have to be brick and mortared. I can, because I have my mind and I have all of these social media tools. And so what I've seen is some really exciting things happening and it's the salespeople, it's not the leaders, it's the salespeople that are saying, water finds a way. And there are solutions out here, and I can find them. I think we're still seeing leadership not believing in that or not wanting to live that out fully once we're on what they call the other side of this. But when we're looking at employee retention, there is no other side of this, because this isn't the right place to be anyway. So if we continue to think a 5 or 6 day a week schedule of bell to bell is productive, when we break it down and look at productivity per hour, when we break it down and look at like dollars per hour after an 8-hour schedule, when we look at our revenue the last 3 days of the month versus the prior 27 or 28, and we look at the fact that the studies show we're actually bleeding cash the last 48 hours we're open every month. So every one of those incremental sales is costing us money. I think when we can roll this up into a whole employee profile story, we can now say, okay, the schedule, we can get this done without the boundaries of the schedule that we were groomed on. And that's part of the hardest thing, Mike, because you and I both cut our teeth on in automotive. And it's like, but my dad did it, but my friends did it, because I was told this is the only way that you could be successful is to do this. But when we find out that you can actually do that and be successful, I think we'll start to see, it's going to take a bit, but I think we'll start to look at adapting schedules, adapting benefit packages that appeal to people, changing our expectations of what productivity looks like and doesn't, and then start to attract people into the industry instead of being an industry that typically hasn't, even if they attract people, has not done a fantastic job of retaining and growing and developing leadership through this system.
That's great, great advice there. What do you think are probably the three biggest challenges that the automotive industry, retail automotive industry in particular, has in front of itself, over the next year with everything that's going on? I know nobody has a crystal ball, right? So I'm just looking for your insight and your opinion here. What do you think are the three biggest challenges we're going to have to overcome here?
I'm going to start with institutional or legacy thinking. Like that really is, and I'm starting with that intentionally because until we let go of whatever we called a winning formula and say, I've got to take what I do know, but shed some of this, the vision that I had for this. It's time to shift it because we're seeing everything impacted off of that. The way profitability is achieved is different now. The way that we attract employees and retain employees is different now, but especially the way that we attract and retain customers. So I would say the institutional or legacy thinking. So I would say with love, with so much love and respect to so many dealers out there, is really watch what questions you're asking, what behaviors are rewarding, right from your general manager all the way through. Like, don't tell me about the day or the month. What is our 90-day trend looking like? How are we preparing our people for even harder times? So I would say it's the institutional thinking. The next thing I would say is coaches need to be team builders. The managers need to be team builders, not deal pushers. Even with all of the amazing things we've seen people do to overcome the adversity that COVID brought us, we still are not, we still have opportunity to do so much more with coaching the team towards a cohesive structure rather than the individual business units. And that includes how we pay our people. Why should the finance manager benefit disproportionately to the salesperson who had to do so many more hours to make that same deal happen in the midst of COVID? Even when we see, Mike, the salesperson going to your driveway to fill out the paperwork and maybe finish selling products, yet we have a finance manager that might be making 5 to 10 times the amount on a deal versus a salesperson. The last thing I would say is to really, there's no time more important to double down on paying attention to consumer behavior everywhere, not in the auto industry. I think in our industry, sometimes we get caught in a trap of like, well, we say the customer's always right, but then we do almost everything except for do what the customer says that they want. And that's why we have CSI. And that's why we have difficulty retaining some of our customers. That's why our lifetime value, the LTV of our customers, isn't what it could be or should be. And so I'd say it's difficult to talk to automotive retail about customers because they think, back to the institutional thinking, they think they're doing a great job. But when you're the dealer and you step out into that environment and you look at the digital cracks and corners and crevices, you might see that there's just a huge opportunity to do more, do it earlier, do it more often, and seek to treat them like the customers and the great people that they are all along the journey, not just if they cross the threshold of your beautiful building. So the institutional thinking, and then everything around your coaching and teams, and then absolutely your consumers, not necessarily in that order.
Okay, those are definitely three good ones. Now, one thing that I think you've become known for over time is you're saying, better together. Can you kind of elaborate on what that means and, what that philosophy really means to the industry?
Just you even saying that, Mike, just literally almost just makes me just smile ear to ear because I think about it. And like, I came from automotive retail side, and all the time, I got into it a little bit later than most people in life. All the time, I'm looking at all of these partnerships that are there. The partnership with the dealership and their people, the partnership with the dealership and their vendors and the manufacturer. And I looked at even the departments inside the store, like why does service not talk to sales? Or if we have a collision center, why don't I know about it? And how does the money flow? And I always looked at it from the people and also the money that was happening. And everybody really has the same goal, yet everyone's working for their own purposes. And so when I saw that happening over and over again, I'm like, wait, if Mike's selling a product and I'm a dealer, the better that I know Mike as a human, and then the more respect that I'll give him. So I'll listen more to what he has to say. And the more involved Mike will get, conversely, to helping make sure my dealership lifts and grows. And he'll be willing to have tough conversations like, Laurie, you've really never given my reps time to tell you how to use the product. You're only using about 3% and we're charging you this if you want to use it fully. And so helping me understand. So when I say better together, it can sound like cute and trite on the surface. It's anything but, because you plus me should be more than just the you plus me. It should be a multiplier. And so I look at better together. It's not additive. 1 and 1 is 2. It's like 1 plus 1 maybe equals 7 or 8. And then what if we start layering that? You're a vendor, I'm a dealer. What if we layer in my manufacturer relationship? And then we're both simultaneously working on our better togethers in our own businesses with our teams and their cohesion, like lifting everything. You know the phrase, rising tides raises all boats. However, it's very difficult to see how that applies unilaterally in an industry that has so many challenges from so many fronts, yet so much opportunity for everyone to just step back and take a look around and go, gosh, if I knew some of these people better, I could contribute to them, they can contribute to me, and we can all lift.
That's great. Let's kind of take that a little bit further and say, what's your advice for a vendor that wants to get, to be better together with their dealers? Somebody that's, looking at the person on the front lines for a vendor that maybe they have 50 to 100 dealer customers and they want to help make them better. They want to get better themselves. What would be your, advice for kind of a first step to say, hey, this is how I would go about, enhancing your relationship and getting better together from, advice to a vendor?
First of all, I'll give myself a little plug here, because no one's talking to vendors about lifting their performance with dealers and lifting their understanding. So I think I was the first one in the industry to say out loud, like, my goodness, if you want to change what you're getting out of dealers, then you've got to change your approach. And that starts with understanding and awareness. And so I have a workshop that I do for vendors where we can all come together and we find out what a vendor really knows and doesn't know about their dealership. And I'm just not talking about where the coffee machine is or saying, hey, you got a lot of cars out there today, or how's business this weekend. I'm talking about knowing and understanding how a dealership operates through the lens of the dealer. Not most vendors, Mike, and this is probably at least 70 or 80%. They look at the dealer, even when they're training their new reps to go out, even when they try to say, here's how we can help our dealers better, they're doing it through the lens of selling them a product. And so then they say, well, Mike, when you know this about a dealer, that sets you up to sell this. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's so incomplete, and everyone's doing something similar to that. Instead, it's backing up. And I take people through an exercise as simple as you pull up to the dealership, the flagpoles are getting painted, or the light poles. There's somebody on the roof working, like patching the holes. You're seeing cars going in and out with a bunch of older retirees driving a stream of cars in and out. You're looking at the busy service lane, and that general manager or dealer that you're about ready to walk in and ask for a few minutes of their time, which you've struggled to get, you don't realize that single person was responsible for all of that. And I think that's the thing. If most vendors understood how incredibly varied and numerous the responsibilities are of the leaders, the organization, it's not a pyramid, it's like a needle at the top. There is no backup, right?
So true.
Yeah, and so I think that's the thing. And so then now, because one of the things I found out in the workshops, Mike, is I asked everybody, like, how easy is it to get in the attention of Mike, the dealer, or the GM? They're all like, they see a lot of negative things. Let's put it that way. You're really, you're evasive, and you break your appointments, and they showed up and you weren't there, or they left you material and you didn't read it, or you didn't remember who they were, but they fail to understand the incredible weight that you have on your shoulders, not just every day when you walk in, but it's nonstop. And so when I say I have love and passion and commitment for our dealers and our GMs, it's absolutely true. Do I want to hold them to a place where they can see a different way to do this? Absolutely. But most vendors are training their people to just go in. Here's what you need to know. Go sell a thing. Go sell our widget to them. And they do not understand where they're landing and all of that. by the end of the day in this workshop, the vendors are actually sitting there going like, I can't believe they ever take our calls. Not, I can't believe they didn't make the call. I can't believe they ever have time. And that humility, we don't want people to be crushed, but that humility is the right place to be to approach an organization successfully. That awareness of like, I cannot even imagine, it looks like you had a busy weekend. I can't imagine your weekend. Tell me the high points and the low points of it, Mike. And just as a friend, how can I help you out? Like, tell me about the crazy employee situations, because these people are handling it all. They're handling it all. So vendors need to back up, reassess how they even decide where their product lands and how they're going to send their people out into that field that the dealers are operating in 24/7, 365. The vendors go home on the weekend. The dealers, you saw me write about that a few weeks ago. The dealers Saturday morning, 6 o'clock, they're on their way to work while we're all on the deck reading our paper and drinking our coffee. The holidays, we're taking time off. They're still working. And there's so much respect that I give for the people who are in the fray every day.
So, kind of to parlay off of that a little bit, what kind of advice would you have for that ultra busy GM dealer principal, how to leverage their vendors better, because I think there's this probably two different perceptions, like you said. One is that there's a lot of folks in the vendor world that think that there's an evasive, person who's too busy on that side of things. When maybe that's not the case. There's somebody that is incredibly busy. They're not necessarily evasive. They just have to prioritize, a list of 25 fires that they have to put out throughout the day. And they'd love help if they knew they could trust somebody to help them. What kind of advice would you have for a dealer principal or a general manager in terms of, how do you become better together when it comes to utilizing, your vendors, whether that's technology vendors, F&I vendors, whatever that may be?
Yeah, the first thing I would do is I would say, even the step just before that, I would take a look at your entire spend with all these vendors. I stumbled on a number while I went searching for it. The average dealer has 78 vendors.
Wow.
So that means from the guy that's patching the roof to the guy that's providing you your financial services products, right? But 78 vendors. So you have to first decide who, right? And then you have to decide, and I would decide that initially by budget, like what chunk of my budget is going to, like what are my top 10 spend vendors? Most people aren't looking at it like that. They bucket them by type rather than dollars. I would look at the top 10 vendors by spend, whatever they are. And I would commit as a general manager or an owner to getting to know those people as best as they can, as fast as they can. Not your buddy that drops by, hey, you want to go knock around some golf balls? No, your top 10 spend. And if you even have to winnow that back, go to 7, but don't go less than that. Because when you look at your dealer's overall budget, and then you say, how much is that spend that I have with these people costing me annually? And what am I getting out of that? And what are the areas that I have people that I absolutely know without a doubt that we're executing on those partnerships extremely well? And when do I see those people? And I would commit to those 7 to 10 being in every meeting that happens for the next 90 days. And I would even call the meetings. And you might even want to say, as a dealer, I'm forming a cabinet. I have my trusted advisors, or I have my 20 group, but I'm going to have a cabinet. And this cabinet is going to have, as long as you're in my top 7 or top 10 spend, there's a monthly meeting. And Mike, this may sound insane, but even if they're competitors, if you got, let's just go with it, like an Auto Trader and a Cars.com or a True Car, and like get them in the same room and just say, I need to know more things about how you work and more things about how I and we coach our teams to use your products so that we're maximizing our spend with you and we're doing it as efficiently as possible, as enjoyably as possible. And any evolutions that you have, I need to be notified of those immediately so that we can have rollout. So if I'm the dealer, I'm having those meetings every single month, no matter what. And if there are vendors that say you're not important enough, and remember, they were your top 7 to 10 spend. So if that's not a big enough chunk of my budget for them to send in somebody to meet with me monthly, then maybe that's a vendor I have to review my relationship. But I think then, Mike, back to the better together piece, you'll even see how those people, because this is one thing that happens out of these transforming workshops, is that now these people actually look at each other, your vendors, like how they can partner together themselves to help you even more. like, wait, you do this? I had no idea. Like the conversations that you will see and hear are like technical term goosebump worthy because now you've got two people that you thought were almost unrelated or might be in competition. Your vendors, are looking at how they can be better together and partner to serve you even better. That is where it comes all the way full circle, but you have to create this. You have to create these environments.
Well, that's awesome. I think you've provided quite a few good nuggets here for us to process and think about here. And you work with both dealerships and vendors, right? So you have workshops you consult with, across, every side of the industry here, right?
Yep. If it's under the automotive retail umbrella, people, performance, and strategies to support those both to profitability. Yes.
Great. And what is the easiest way for somebody to reach out to you if they do want to work with you on any of the things that you mentioned here?
Sure. Well, we've always got LinkedIn, which a lot of people know me through that. But like my number is 269-217-0414, and I take texts every day through LinkedIn or through text. And then my website is www.fosterstrategies, because we have more than one.com, www.fosterstrategiesgroup.com, and or just hit me up at Laurie at fosterstrategiesgroup.com.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you spending the time with us today. Always great to talk to you. I learned something every time. So thanks again. And I look forward to talking to you again soon.
I appreciate you, Mike. Thank you for the opportunity.